All right, we are live. What is up, swimmers and swammers? Welcome back to the SwimSwam Breakdown. I am your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. I took the week off last week. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, visiting my newly born nephew. He's adorable, but now I am back. I am here with my fellow Brooklynite, Sophie Kaufman. It's just the two of us today, but we have a lot of swimming to discuss. And I think top of everyone's mind here, let's just get the comments in here. We got our first comment, and of course, it is about the 12-year-old Chinese swimmer Yu Ziti, who has qualified for the World Championships in now 2 events. She placed second in the 200 IM at the Chinese Nationals. She was 210, I think 6 in that to qualify for the World Championships, but now she has won the 200 butterfly 206.83. And again, she is 12 years old. So people are baffled. A lot of theories about what could or could not be going on there. But Sophie, let's just start with this. A 12-year-old girl going these kinds of times. What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my favorite parts about like swimming being such an international sport is getting to wake up and read headlines that make me go, "Wait, what?" And it's usually the time that's doing that, but with these headlines it's happening twice because you get to the time and then you get to she's 12 and you're like, "Wait a minute. I haven't had coffee yet. How is that real?" But it's real. And it's really impressive, especially when the 210 from 2 a.m. from a few days ago, all the comparisons have been made. The U.S. national age group record is like a
18.
2:18, and it just she continues to impress as the week goes on. You thought the 210 was going to be the only thing, and then to this morning from the 206 200 fly, that is just as impressive in my mind. And in a few women's 200 fly international field that just doesn't have a ton of numbers in it, like that's going to put you in the final like easily. So it's insane.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I like that you bring that up because, we've seen the women's 200 fly at, I think, world championships, maybe even Olympics, like not barely have a prelims, right? Like there's
Yeah.
16 women or 17 women. So like pretty much everyone makes it through at some points, but 206.8 for her 200 fly, I believe that would have been fourth in Paris last year.
Something
Uh,
like that, yeah.
yeah, certainly would have made the final. She was 208, I want to say 6 in the semifinals yesterday, and everyone was very shocked about that. They're like, "Wow, that's almost making a final," or that almost makes the final in Paris. That's really knocking on the door, and this is obviously 2 seconds faster than that, and it just what an astonishing performance from such a young swimmer. Um, I don't want to speculate on how she has come by these results. Like I think innocent until proven otherwise in my book, but it, some people have just brought up the training that she's going through, and I think we tend to see female athletes develop in a younger age. We've certainly never seen someone go this fast this young, but if you watch her races, which SwimSwam has posted, technique doesn't seem great, right? Like I know in her 200 IM, like she did like a half stroke finish. Her butterfly seems honestly a little choppy. Like you can just kind of pick out things, certainly her turns and finishes being one of them, that it's like, yeah, this is a 12-year-old, like it seems like there are certainly still areas of improvement for her. She's had the meat of her career so far, not that it's been very long, but she's also gone 54-7 in the 100 free leading off a relay, 158.0 in the 200 free leading off a relay. And she still has, I think, perhaps the 800 free and 400 IM left to swim at this meet. So a lot more to see from Yu Ziti. But one big comparison, I think, especially for the United States, was that of Mary T. Maher, who set the 13-14 national age group record in the 200 fly in what was then a world record of 207.01. That was in 1979. And again, 12-year-old UZD has now gone faster than that time. So pretty monumental and honestly pretty cool to see. Sophie, like you said, it's fun that swimming can be such an international sport, and we can wake up and see headlines from all over the world and swimmers from all over the world wrecking it.
Yeah. I also think that it's just ridiculous now. Like at the start of this year, it felt like this could be a really boring, quiet year after the Paris Olympics, and that's just proven false time and time again. How many, we've seen so many world records fall already. We haven't even had US nationals.
Yeah.
World champs is still a few months away, and now we just have this.
No kidding. And how exciting to not only see this 12-year-old at Chinese nationals swimming really well, but China is going to have a stacked roster coming into this Asian-based world championships in Singapore. And it's super exciting to see that, a country from the home continent will really be bringing the heat. They had a fantastic Olympic showing in Paris, and it seems like they could maybe even top that in Singapore. So it's very good to see in this post-Olympic year that things are still revving up. I think it's maybe less so for the United States. Maybe that's another topic for perhaps another podcast, but maybe we can pull that in at the end. That we've seen so many U.S. athletes pull out or say like, "Oh, hey, I'm taking a break," or it's not looking the brightest for the U.S. coming into this World Championships. But I digress. Let's talk a little bit more about these Chinese nationals, though, because again, we've seen a lot of great swims. Any standout swims other than those of Yu Ziti from these Chinese nationals for you, Sophie?
Yeah, I think Li Bingji finally breaking 4 minutes in the 400 free has to be up there. She's now the 6th woman to do that. It gets no less impressive each time someone new gets under that barrier. We've gotten so used to seeing Titmus and Ledecky and McIntosh kind of battling it out well underneath that barrier. That's kind of an old trick for them, but to, see other women start to clear that mark. We had Erica Fairweather a couple of years ago, and now Li Bingji. She's had such a long and successful career that clearing like this box that she had still kind of left to tick, to see her get under that just kind of adds to the hype for what world champs will be. Obviously Titmus won't be there, and you're kind of prepping for another battle between McIntosh and Ledecky, but then there are these other women who are going to be in that final and who are going to push it as well, and can challenge, like we saw with Fairweather when she knocked McIntosh off the podium 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, that was a great swim. Li Bingji has been swimming excellent all meet, right? I think she won a best time in the 200 free as well. She put up a great 800 free. So we've been seeing her swim, have a wonderful meet. I was like, oh, she's the 6th woman who, I knew who the most recent 4 were. Forgot about Federica Pellegrini, the first woman to do it. But yeah, like you said, 6th woman to dip under is really awesome for her and just for history. Some other great swims. We saw a couple from Olympic champions just this morning or last night if you're in China, from Wang Shun, 156.5 in the 200 IM. So he's going to be a factor and a force after winning a bronze in Paris last year, and then winning that event in Tokyo 3 years ago. And then Pan Zhanle, the 100 free world record holder and Olympic champion in the 100 free, 47.7. So he qualified for Singapore in that. man, his range is kind of scary. He is 345 in the 400 free, 146 in the 200 free at this meet.
Yeah, and he had, I'm gonna totally blank on the time, but at the World Cup in short course when he went that 800 freestyle time and just kind of was, everybody was like, wait a minute, you're the 100 freestyle world record holder. What are you doing? But yeah, I mean, it just seems like breaking that world record was like just the start for him, and he's only continued to grow and like become that much more of a factor in all these other freestyle events too.
Yeah, and it seems like it's kind of funny because he is the same age as David Popovich, right? Like, and they've had kind of these different trajectories where we saw David Popovich rise up and have this like meteoric success in the 2, and then I guess 3, but then Panjan La has this. He had some really great swims leading up to the Paris Olympics, but then obviously he'd been 47 too. I think he had been 46 at least once leading up to the Paris Olympics, but then obviously 46.4, massive world record. And since then, that seems to have kind of skyrocketed him in not only the 100 free, but yeah, just all of these other events. And again, very cool to see so many of these young men on the international swimming stage just wrecking it, and doing it in ways that maybe we haven't seen before, or haven't seen in a long time. That Panjan La's range feels very Ian Thorpe-esque. Obviously, he's not specializing in the 400, 200 free distances as Ian Thorpe did, but that range is pretty special. And again, we normally don't see people specializing in the 100 free swimming up to a 200, 400, even 800 short course.
I mean, you kind of have a similar thing with Lucas Martins almost. Like, he doesn't drop down to the 100, but he can do 200 to 1500. And we've seen him have to sometimes make the decision about where he's going to focus his efforts. And it seems like, recently he's really kind of zeroed in. He's kind of like less on the 1500 and a little bit more, 400, 800, 200 range. But, it just opens up so many more options for Pan going forward to think about, where he wants to put his energy. And we've talked a lot about, Leon getting involved in like a 400 freestyle or 200 freestyle race, but to see Pan also put his name in for something like that is exciting, and to think about what that field could look like as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of Leon Marchand and the 400 freestyle, let's go to the Longhorn invite, which was last weekend, where we saw a lot of the Texas pros back in action racing a couple weeks after the Fort Lauderdale Pro Swim. Notably, Leon Marchand 407 in the 400 IM, over 6 seconds faster than he was in Fort Lauderdale. He also was allowed to get world championship qualifying times from the Fort Lauderdale meet and this Longhorn Elite invite. So he is now qualified for world champs in the 2 IM, 4 IM, and 2 breast. What stood out to you most about this Texas tune-up?
I think for me, like, obviously Leon is up there, and just how dramatically he improved from Fort Lauderdale to the Longhorn invite, like 2 weeks in between. He talked a lot in Fort Lauderdale about like, I didn't know where I was and now I know. And so it's still impressive to see him make those kind of drops in such a short amount of time, but also getting to see someone like Rex Maurer, who we didn't see in Fort Lauderdale, kind of give us a sense of like what all these drops and yards are going to mean for his long course season. And things look pretty good for him. He came into the meet with like an 810, 800 freestyle best and went a 751, which, the 751 is like on par with what you would expect for the American record holder in the 500-yard freestyle. But that kind of drop is ridiculous. He was also 146.7 in the 2 free and 346.5 in that 400 freestyle race. That was a great race between him, Marchand, and Carson Foster, it looked like from the splits. Would have loved to have seen the live stream of the race, but alas.
Can't always have it all. Yeah. But no, yeah, it was a great meet. I think one other really encouraging thing, Simone Manuel raced in Fort Lauderdale, did not have that great of a meet, but we got to talk to her and she's like, Reagan was bragging about how good Simone has been in training. And then Simone had said, yeah, I'm doing some of the hardest training I've ever done in my life. I'm having some of the best training I've ever done in my life. And then I think that showed up a little bit more for her. I think she was 53 low. She was 24.5, I want to say, in the 50, 157 or 8 in the two, I think 157 in the 200 free. And so those results for her seemed to show up a little bit more in Austin. For whatever reason, she was not firing in Fort Lauderdale, but dude, to have she's been on the elite stage for a decade. She's been in world championship finals and on American relays for 10 plus years. And I guess, since 2013. And to still be throwing down the times that she is in season, and we're going to see what she does at trials in a couple weeks here. It's pretty incredible, especially to go through everything she's been through. I'm encouraged by what we're seeing from Simone, especially training under Bob Bowman in Austin.
Sure. I mean, that 100 freestyle is like 100th and 200ths off the swims she went at Olympic trials last season. So it's like right on her best since she's made her comeback. So I think it is really impressive, and it's really encouraging to see her be able to put that out, especially 2 weeks after she is talking like really candidly about like, I thought I would be better at this meet. Like I have been putting in good training, and it's hard to not see that payoff, but you also kind of have to trust that process. And then to see that payoff for her so quickly afterwards, I think it's just going to be a big confidence boost for her heading back to Indianapolis now for World Champ trials.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go Simone. That rooting for her always. So that was really great to see. I think some of the other Texas pros had some solid swims. Texas swimmers had some solid swims as well, but I think those were mostly the highlights. One interesting piece of information we got from Bob Bowman, excuse me, was that the Texas training group, whoever ends up making world champs and world university games after trials, will be competing at Indy again at the Indy Summer Cup at the end of June, which to me just answers a couple questions. We'll get to see him race again, which is exciting, before the world champs, as a kind of a tune-up meet. And I'm guessing if they're going to that meet, we'll probably see a few other high-level teams or athletes competing at that meet. I would think certainly Indiana would go to that meet, whether or not they have world championship qualifiers. I'm guessing Indiana's going to put at least one or two athletes on that team, but but especially from the breaststroke U contingent, I feel like Lily King is looking as good as ever, and the men's breaststroke, the men's US breaststroke,
we don't
is a
have
whole
time
other
for
conversation, but I'm gonna guess at least one Indiana Hoosier on the men's side gets on the team in breaststroke. But anyway, so I think that will be an Indy Summer Cup last weekend of June. I think that'll be an exciting meet. And I think it's also really good to see that, again, we have this like weird 6-7 week period between world championship trials, first week of June, and world champs last week of July. So it's kind of a novel thing, really, to see our trials happen and then to see another competition where a lot of athletes who make the world champ team will be competing, but it's not world champs. So as a swim fan, I'm kind of excited to see.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. It's not so much of a surprise that Bob Bowman has like made this commitment for his athletes, because we've seen, Bowman and Herbie Bame at ASU, and Bowman's kind of brought it to Austin, the idea of like, we need to practice racing. Like, we're not going to like hide from racing experience. Like, we want to get up and go fast and get that experience. So I wonder if that's something that's going to become more common. This is, like you said, a kind of a novel thing to have this a big break like this between our trials and world championships. Plenty of other countries have this happen, but it's not often that we do. So I wonder if it will become a more common thing, as training philosophies continue to evolve.
Agreed. And, it's like, so I think Canadian trials are the week after our trials this year. I think Australian nationals are sometime in June, maybe the week of Canadian trials or even the week after, but also interested to see how other nations handle this big span of time between trials and world champs, and if they'll have
Yeah. I mean,
competitions
I
as
think it's
well.
something that people are going to have to get used to before LA, because I think the new reports are, swimming and track are going to switch for the Los Angeles Games because they're both going to be in SoFi Stadium. And that's going to be a whole thing that people are going to have to prepare for and get used to that.
Yeah, swimming, swimming being the second week of the Olympics, absolutely. I'm curious to see if our trials is shifted because of that, or yeah, like you said, if we throw a competition in there, I I'm sure people will get all weird about like, oh, we don't want to show the world our hand and don't want to, whatever. Closed door training camp, suit up race, blah blah blah. But it would be really cool
Secret relay
if in
exchange
the lead up.
meeting. Yeah.
Exactly. But, I can dream. I can uh hopefully manifest into reality a post-Olympic trials, pre-Olympic competition for the US and maybe for some other people. I mean, how cool would it be to like I'm sure you have athletes descending into the US and into LA as the Olympics rev up. It's like people would be doing training camps in the US. Like, why not have a competition?
So
That'd be
you think that
fun.
I'm hearing that you think there should be duel in the pool 2028, like 2 weeks before the Olympics.
Bing, 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 bing. That's exactly what I was thinking. Anyway, we'll skip to another topic. I think this was gonna be just a sink or swim, and you know what? We can just skip to sink or swim. I think at this point, that's fine. So we're talking about swimming in Southern California. We're talking about major international meets. USA Swimming came out with the selection procedure for the 2026 Pan Pacific Championships, which will be in Irvine, California. Pretty interesting. So normally we have a US in a non-Olympic even year like 2026, we would have US Nationals, we would have Pan Pacific Championships, and then from those results we would pick the World Championship team for what would be the 2027 World Championships, and then also like the roster for the Pan American Games and the World University Games, I believe. USA Swimming got some new leadership. We got a new national team director. I don't know how much input he had in this because it came out 3 weeks after he was hired or something. But now what we have is we have U.S. trials this year. We have world championships this year. And from those results, as well as world junior championships, and I think there might even be one other meet in there, we are selecting the Pan Pacific Championship team for 2026 from those 2025 results. We can kind of get into it. I think one other just little interesting tidbit is that we will have a U.S. Nationals in Irvine in 2026 about 10 days before Pan Pacs happens. So U.S. Nationals will be the first 4 or 5 days of August, and then Pan Pacs will be something like August 12th to 16th. Sophie, thoughts on this updated selection procedure? Are you sinking it or are you swimming it?
I guess in the context of would I rather pick the Pan Pacs team or the World Championship team a year out, I'm swimming it because I would rather pick the Pan Pacs team a year out versus a World Championship team. We've talked about it earlier this year with the British trials and the 200 free tie weirdness that we still don't really know how that's going to shake out. But when you pre-select teams, you're always opening yourself up for some weird little wrinkle or for someone to really pop off at US Nationals 10 days before Pan Pacs and everybody thinks, hey, why aren't they swimming at the big meet? But like I said, I would rather pick the Pan Pacs team a year in advance. It's a little bit of a smaller meet. It's not respectfully as important in my mind as a world championship meet. So I think that if you're going to go for the pre-selection route, this is the better path, in my opinion. I don't love it. Like I think that there should be qualification meets every year, but I understand why they've made this choice. And again, I think it's better than picking a world championship team. But you're always going to leave yourself open for what if weirdness or there's just a lot of unknowns when you pick a team that far in advance.
Agreed. And I do think it's important to get into the why they did this, right? Like why USA Swimming keeps going with this in 1 year of this Olympic quad. If you're in the chat, if you're in the comments, let us know what you think about the selection procedure. I do want to add a couple more things before I get into my reasoning. They are selecting the 2026 Pan Pac roster based on top times from A finals of the 2025 U.S. National Championships, which are the World Trials in June, finals of the 2025 World Champs, finals of the 2025 World University Games, finals of the 2025 World Aquatics World Junior Championships, and then also A finals at the 2025 Tier Pro Summer Championships, which is the meet happening in Irvine in August of this year. So they're casting a wide net here in terms of selection and what meets they are selecting from. But I really like this because I think from a USA Swimming perspective, I think I'm talking to Greg Meehan later this week. So hopefully I'm going to get a clear answer on his perspective on this. But they want to give athletes a little bit of a break, right? And a year where they have some breathing room to say, hey, you're going to be at this meet. This is your big championship meet. You don't have to prepare for a trials meet. And I think the reason they do this is to alleviate some stress. And again, I think this is great timing in the middle of an Olympic quad that's going to be very, very important. I don't actually know. I think the reason why they used to do it in the year before the Olympics is because you had World University Games, Pan American Games, and World Championships. And USA Swimming's priority was to get as many members of the national team swimming at an international competition as possible. And so instead of having, and again, allowing them to prepare for that competition without a trials meet, because that would also entail those meets were all at different times. So if there was a trials meet or a selection meet for that, it'd be like one selection meet and then 3 different meets. Everyone's schedule would kind of be off. So I understand why they did it that way, but I really like how they're doing it this time because it's 2 years out from the Olympics, right? Pan Pacs is not an important meet compared to a World Championships or an Olympics. It is the least, it's the least important long course championship meet of the Olympic quad, right? I don't really have a problem with USA Swimming not prioritizing it in terms of saying, yeah, there might be a few weird things, like someone pops off at US Nationals a couple weeks before and we say, oh, hey, we should have won. They could have been a valuable piece to this relay, or they could have swam a really good time in this individual event. Like, it's Pan Pacs, like no one is going to look back in 2 years after LA and say, if only the US had won that 400 free relay at Pan Pacs, like they would have been better prepared for the Olympics in LA. And I think for that reason, like I like this reasoning and I like this
Yeah,
selection
I think the
procedure.
way they've done it this year by like opening themselves up to not just what happens in Indianapolis in like 2 weeks, but also like leaving the door open for somebody to pop off at Worlds, or maybe more importantly, pop off at like World Juniors. Like they have given themselves a little bit more leeway than I think there has been in the past with these selection procedures, which is helpful and will hopefully mitigate some of that. Like, oh no, like this person, we really would have loved to have had them on the team.
I think one of the big examples of that in the comments was Luka Mijatovic, who people have been high on about making a senior world championships team this summer. I think it was a little funny. SwimSwam, we talked to him at a high school meet in California, and he said his goal for this summer was to make the world junior team or world junior championships. So it's like he's not even worried about making world championships this year. And again, people were saying it would be such a travesty if he misses if he doesn't qualify for Pan Pacs this summer, but then next summer he pops off and goes something crazy. Like he's going to miss that racing experience. It's like he still has junior Pan Pacs. Like he can still go, like he has multiple opportunities to race at a high level and to get international racing experience in. Even if, again, I do not think him missing the Pan Pacific Championships will be the make or break of if he has a successful Olympics
No.
in LA. Yeah. So, like, again, in that vein, I'm not very worried about it because then, again, in 2026, the entire national team, the entire United States can kind of take a deep breath and just be like, okay, this year is not the year, like it still feels like we're building
Mm-hmm.
into this quad. This year, obviously, people are taking breaks, people are taking time off, people are stepping away from competitive swimming, not retiring, but stepping away. And then next year you can kind of, I don't know, pick your poison. It's like, well, if you qualify for Pan Pacs, go do that. You can go to US National. It's like you have some options. But then once 2026 is over, then it's kind of like, okay, now it's go time, because then we have this Olympic prep year where we'll have a trials and we'll have a world championships. And I think there will be other racing opportunities, probably Pan Ams and WUGs. And then we get to the Olympic year. And so I like that flow a lot better than what we had before. And again, I just like that flow also in terms of Pan Pacs is going to be what it is.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It doesn't have to be the complete best showing for the US possible.
No. I mean, hopefully it will still be like a good meet and there will be interesting racing, but it is not going to be the like make or break moment for the USA swimming national team.
Agreed. And again, the world championships before the Olympics in previous years was also not the make or break point. Like, there were some poor performances at those world championships in 2015, or there's some flubs in 2019. Reagan Smith, I think, stands out for a lot of people in 2019, but then we go to the Olympics and perform really great. It's like, it still worked out. And again, I think it's better to put your best foot forward at a world championships, which is a lot more of a simulation of an Olympic Games than a Pan Pacific Championships.
And I think that flow ramp up that you're talking about is important too in this year, because yes, for the US, this is a very important Olympic cycle because it ends with a home Olympics. But for everybody, this is the first traditional 4-year cycle that we're going to have since the lead up to the Rio Games. Because we had the extended one before Tokyo with the pandemic, and then we had the little short 3-year world championships every single year craziness that we just had. So, to kind of you see a lot of people hitting the reset button this year, but then also like, kind of looking beyond 2025, like the slow buildup and like, okay, let's all remember how to do a 4-year cycle that ends actually at the 4-year mark with an Olympic Games.
I forget that we had 3 world championships in 3 years. that was wild. But yeah, like I think this will be a better flow, and I really like USA Swimming's how they're approaching this so far. All right. Speaking of USA Swimming and Greg Meehan obviously gone from Stanford. He's working at USA Swimming now as the national team director. Stanford has already found a replacement for Greg Meehan in Chris Lindauer, who was the head coach of the combined men and women's program at Notre Dame. He is now going to Stanford to take over Greg Meehan's role as the head coach for the Stanford women. Sophie, do you think that Chris Lindauer will be able to maintain the really excellent momentum that Greg Meehan kind of left the Stanford women with this year? That they finished second. They finished NCAA as ahead of Texas. Had multiple maybe surprise NCAA champions, especially coming into the season versus the end of the season. What do you think of this hire?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Stanford?
clearly why they've brought him in, right? Like before the gambling debacle with the men's team being suspended for this season, like they were having a huge breakout. They were really quickly on the rise, and like a lot of that, the circumstances aren't the same, comparing like the Notre Dame men's team to the Stanford women's team and like the history of the program, but also the pieces, like Chris Giuliano was a huge part of that. And for something that the Stanford women really have going for them is that there are so many women contributing to this success. It's not like Tori Husk just came back from her Olympic redshirt year and took over and like is the reason they won so many titles. Like, yes, she played a huge role, like, both in her performances and what she brings to the team, but there were other women, Caroline Bricker won the 400 IM, Lucy Bell won the 200 breaststroke. They won their relay title. There's a lot of women contributing to this success, and that's part of why you really feel that momentum building. So you're looking for Lindauer, that's the big test, right? It's not take this program that has fallen down the ranks. It's this program has built itself back up from, a rebuild after winning 3 straight NCAA titles. And now you need to keep them there because it doesn't seem like there has been a mass exodus into the transfer portal when it was announced that Meehan wasn't going to be coming back, right? Like a lot of these pieces should still be there for him in the fall. If we'll see, it seems like Tori Husk is going to use her final year of eligibility. Like she should have, it seems like it. So, he had a lot of success at Notre Dame in kind of sparking that program. So you think that, okay, like we've seen him do this before. Like now he can maintain a sparked team and keep them at a high level.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up because I mean, certainly this seems like kind of a dream, walking into a dream scenario for many coaches, right? Like you have an Olympic champion, you have multiple NCAA champions, and you have a team that just, again, finished its highest that they have in 4 or 5 seasons, longer, 7 seasons. And so I think it will be very interesting to see how that goes and how Chris Lindauer does, again, coaching just the women versus the combined team. He was on the Olympic staff last year, and I'm guessing that was probably a very valuable experience, not only for him, but for Stanford's decision to bring him on, is not only being able to guide Olympians to the team, but to guide Olympians at the games. I think one of the most interesting storylines will be to see if Tori Husk stays at Stanford. I think we have to remember these are student athletes. Most of these women probably go to Stanford not just to swim. And again, especially going to Stanford, you probably choose to go to Stanford to get a degree, to get the unmatched education that you get at Stanford, and experience you get at Stanford. So I like the point that you brought up that we haven't seen a lot of women hop in the transfer portal. And again, I'm guessing Greg has spoken to them. I'm guessing I'm going to guess Greg probably okayed this hire, or at least was consulted about this hire. Maybe he even recommended this hire to Stanford, but I'm guessing they at least had a conversation. They're like, "What do you think of this guy?" So the fact that, yeah, we haven't seen this exodus of athletes, I'm guessing they want to stay at Stanford. They probably want to finish their degrees. They like being at Stanford, but also they probably have faith in Chris Lindauer that he is going to bring some positive things to their program. So we'll see. Certainly not a coaching changeup I saw coming, but a lot of ripple effects in that regard, because obviously now Notre Dame doesn't have a head coach, and they're about to have a men's program again, as well as a women's program. So we'll see how the ripples play out. Go ahead, Sophie.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, like, and Wisconsin still needs to make an announcement about their head coach, because they've also lost their head coach to USA Swimming now. Like, again, what seemed like it was going to be kind of a calm year with the NCAA coaching carousel has kind of had a couple big things happen that have made it spin.
We're going to wrap up with a few sinker swims today. And first up, there are about a few athletes we've already mentioned. Luka Mijatovic broke a national high school record this past weekend, 4:11.9 in the 500 free. Wasn't a best time because he's already been 4:10, but it did break Rex Mauer's national high school record by nearly a second. And the age-old question, Sophie, sink or swim, Luka Mijatovic makes the world championship team this summer.
Yeah, I think this is a very popular topic of discussion leading into U.S. Nationals. I'm still sinking this, and I think it's okay if he doesn't. Like he said, he wants to make World Juniors. Like that's where he's looking at. Not to say that he's not going to be involved in a final or maybe really close to making the World Championship team, but I don't think it happens for him this year. There is certainly space for it too. The revolving door of distance swimmers who take the second roster spot behind Bobby Fink in those distance events is still kind of spinning. Luke Whitlock just announced that he won't be at U.S. Nationals, and he had really kind of solidified himself as the second person in the 800 free after that 745. But then you're also looking at someone like Rex Mauer, right, who is going to be hopefully really involved in that action as well. So I am sinking this. I think he'll make World Juniors, and I think he'll do really well there. But for me, I still think that it's a little too early to see him on a senior World Championship team.
Yeah, I think I am going to sink that as well. Again, his goal is to make World Junior Championships. That honestly might help him to make World Championships, because he's not putting this pressure on himself to qualify for this senior international team. But I think there will be enough to say. I think there will be enough competition that there will be two guys who get ahead of Luka. I don't think he's quite there yet. 4:10 in the 500 free is crazy, and we've already seen he can do it in long course. But I think there are at least two guys be there ahead of him in all three distance freestyle events. All right. Next up, Leon Marchand. Again, he went 4:07.1 in the 400 IM. That led to many speculating that he could be faster than his own world record this summer in Singapore. So sink or swim. Leon Marchand dips under the 400 IM world record this summer in Singapore.
I'm kind of two minds about this one because I think, he and Bob Bowman have been very clear that the goal is LA and that everything that's going to happen in the next 3 years is in service of his performance in Los Angeles. So that makes me think no, but then also, feeling relaxed and like stress-free and just like, feeling the pressure come off after a really intense home Olympics for him, like that could be a really freeing experience that would like then just kind of lead him to breaking his world record. I still think I'm gonna sink it. It wouldn't be like the most surprising thing for me in the world if he takes a couple tenths or even a couple hundredths off that time. But I just think that like as he continues to build back from his extended break, from his injuries, like he's had a lot of really positive results come out of the Longhorn Elite Invite. And I think that there are still ways for him to have a successful 2025 World Championship, but I'll sink the world record.
Yeah, I'm gonna swim it for similar reasoning to what you said, Sophie. I think he'll be a lot more. He's put in serious training with Bowman the last couple of years, and then this year he has been dealing with injuries. He did take an extended break, but I think that can also be a good thing and kind of play into his hand a little bit. He was also training with Dean Boxall and doing, a lot more freestyle training, which I think we've already seen from that 407 is going to help the back end of his 400 IM. And I think he was probably in world record form last year in Paris. He just, the nerves, the environment, like he did not need to break a world record. He just needed to win a gold medal. And that's what he did. So I think we could see it this year. I think he's going to be relaxed in Singapore. There's not going to be a lot of pressure. But he, to drop 6 seconds in 2 weeks, I don't think he's going to go anything crazy. I think he might go 4:01, which is crazy. That time is insane. But I don't think he's going to go 3:59, but like, I think that all the work he put in leading up to Paris, I think he's going to kind of bank that this season, as well as the work that he's put in in mid distance freestyle and racing the 400 free. I think that's going to benefit his 400 IM as well. So I'm going to swim it. I could see it for Leon. All right. Finally, Yu Ziti. We end where we started in this in this podcast. Chips. I think now I have to ask, will she win a medal at World Championships?
I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely swimming the final. Like, I kind of tipped my hand about that earlier, I think. Yeah. But, like, the 206 and the 200 fly is just so hard to ignore. Like, that does make the final. It's so hard, like, because she's 12, right? And, like, there are clearly, like, a lot of things that if you watch the race video, like, there are places for her, really obvious places for her to get faster. But she's also 12. And, like... there's just so much unpredictability about that. Like, what is that? Basically that's sixth grade, right?
Like, yeah, 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah, like that's a chaotic time in a person's life. So it's really hard to say. I think I'll sink the medal. I mean, if you're expecting both Summer McIntosh and Regan Smith to be in that 200 fly field, there's kind of one step left on the podium. And the 206 implies that she can certainly get there. But I think I'll sink it for now and keep my strategy going, or at least the pattern of like, let the juniors like chill out.
We just need to chill out this year. Okay.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm gonna sink it as well. Nothing against Yu Ziti. I think she's 12, and medaling on a world stage is like a very, very big deal, and it's tough to do, especially in her events. I mean, look at the women's 200 IM: Kayla McEwen, Alex Walsh, Kate Douglas, Summer McIntosh. Look at the women's 200 fly: Summer McIntosh, Reagan Smith. I know the other Olympic medalist in that was Zhang Yufei, but it's like those events are not easy to break into a podium in. And again, her time would have been fourth. And Zhang Yufei is not swimming at Chinese nationals, I don't think, or she at least didn't swim the 200 fly. But I mm, I just don't see it. Certainly for a future, why not? But this year, I'm going to say sink. So, okay, that's our breakdown. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.